One of the most disappointing things that can happen to you when you're baking sourdough bread in a Dutch oven is that the loaf looks perfect on this side, but you run into this problem on the other side, the burnt bottom sourdough. Now, a few months ago, I heard about this trick to prevent a burnt bottom on your sourdough bread. Supposedly, all you have to do is slip a sheet of aluminum foil underneath your Dutch oven while the bread is baking, and the bottom of your bread won't be scorched by the oven heat. I really wanted to put this trick to the test, so in today's video, that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be baking 2 loaves of bread. One I'll just be baking in my Dutch oven, and the other one I'll be baking with a sheet of aluminum foil underneath the oven to see if there's any difference in the bottom of the loaf. For this test, I am using 2 loaves of my medium hydration sourdough bread recipe. That's a 75% hydration dough. I'll put a link to that video in the description down below if you want to learn how to make this bread. For this test, I'm making 2 equal-sized oval-shaped batards. They're both 885 grams in weight. So I just shaped those up, pop them into a Banneton basket each, let them puff up for about an hour, then I move them to the fridge to proof for about 8 hours. That brings me to test day. I'm preheating my Dutch oven for about a half hour to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. It's on the second to bottom rack, and usually when my Dutch oven is this low, the bottom of the bread burns. So today I'm going to test if foil will stop that from happening. I want this to be as even a test as possible, so once the oven is preheated, I'm checking the temperature of the Dutch oven, and it's just about 503 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to try to get the same temperature when I'm baking both of these loaves of bread. Flipping out my first loaf onto a little sheet of parchment paper. Thank you to my subscriber who sent me some pre-cut sheets of parchment paper. These things are awesome. I'm just going to score this like any standard simple loaf of sourdough bread that I make, with one long slash right across the top of the loaf. Then I'm going to transfer this carefully into the hot Dutch oven, which has already been preheated. Then I'm going to close the lid to trap the steam inside like always, and I'm going to slide it back into the oven to bake. I'm not using any aluminum foil for this bake. I'm going to bake this for 20 minutes with the lid of the Dutch oven on. Then 20 minutes later, I am going to remove the lid just to release the steam, and I'm going to admire the oven spring on this loaf. It's looking pretty good. Then I'll continue baking that for another 15 minutes with the lid off. 15 minutes later, here's what the bread looks like. It's been baking at 500 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes total. Looks pretty good on the outside, but the bottom is burnt, just like I expected. I've put up with burnt bottoms plenty of times when I'm baking with my regular Dutch oven, and I'm hoping that aluminum foil can be a simple and cheap solution to this problem. So I'm just preheating the Dutch oven again so it gets back up to 500 degrees Fahrenheit, and there it is. And I'm flipping out the second dough onto the second piece of parchment paper, just like with the first one. Again, these doughs are the exact same weight. They were made in the same batch of dough. Everything about them is exactly the same. The only variable is going to be that I'm putting a little sheet of aluminum foil under the Dutch oven when I bake this one. So I'm transferring the second dough into the Dutch oven. Gonna pop the lid on, slide it into the oven to bake, and here's the moment of truth. Will the sheet of aluminum foil that I'm sliding underneath the Dutch oven have any effect on the burnt bottom on this bread? In theory, this is supposed to stop the bottom of the bread from scorching. Let's see if it works. I'm baking this for 20 minutes with the lid on, just like the last loaf, removing the lid and admiring the oven spring. This definitely opened up, but it's already looking a little bit paler to me. So maybe the aluminum foil is blocking some of the heat and not allowing it to get as dark. I'm not sure. I'm just going to keep baking this for 15 minutes, just like the first loaf. 15 minutes later, this is what the bread looks like. Almost identical on the outside to the other loaf. It's golden brown on top and golden brown on the sides. It's got a pretty nice ear. I'm going to let these 2 loaves cool down, and then we'll compare their bottoms. So this loaf on the left was the first loaf that I baked in the Dutch oven. The one on the right had the aluminum foil underneath the Dutch oven. And you already saw the bottom of this one. It's definitely scorched on the bottom. It's the kind of loaf that if you baked it for a friend, you'd kind of feel bad giving it to them because you know they're just not going to like it. So let's see if the aluminum foil had any effect. And it sure did. I was so happy when I saw this. It's definitely darker on the bottom than it is kind of on the sides, but the golden brown color on the bottom is very comparable to just what you see on the top and the sides of the loaf here. It's just golden brown. It's not scorched or charred or blackened in any way whatsoever. It's definitely a loaf I'd be happy to give to a friend And that's actually what I'm doing with this loaf, which is why I'm not going to cut into it and show you the crumb shot. But I am happy to report that one simple sheet of aluminum foil can save the bottom of your loaf of sourdough bread. If your Dutch oven burns the bottom of your loaf, give this trick a try. It seems to work. If you happen to know scientifically why this trick works, let me know in the comments. And if you're still looking for that perfect sourdough bread recipe, check out my 2 favorite recipes right here.